There is always financial news. Sometimes it's legit, sometimes it's just noise. We're here to help you sort out the two. Welcome to the opening segment of the Get Ready for the Future show. We call it the What's Happening segment. John Shrewsbury here with you. Scott Inman is gallivanting the globe someplace. I'm not real sure where he's at. And Teresa Arrigo is in studio with us today from our Conway office. Teresa, how's it going?
Going well. I'm kind of glad to be here. I got to be here 2 weeks in a row, which is not the normal schedule. So I'm excited to be here to talk.
Your star power is going up in Central Arkansas even as we speak.
I hope so.
So the headline of the day today is more than half of Americans say money is their number one source of stress. This is from Instagram, and I can relate to this. I think that's a very legitimate headline.
Yes.
But the question is, why?
Well, this is something we've seen consistently among a lot of different studies. There was one that kind of checked with people who were close to retirement age, and many of them said they feared running out of money over death. And that's a pretty impactful thing to say. You know, this particular story talked about how it outranks work, health, and personal relationships on their anxiety levels. And that makes sense because we've done research on workplace stress and what distracts people from work, and it's always finance. But it encompasses so much of our lives that it makes sense that when it feels out of balance, it's going to be scary.
I want to go to the why. Why is this? Why are Americans so stressed over money? And I believe that it really does have a very fundamental root in the fact that we don't talk about money.
Yes, I agree.
And even with our kids, we tend to not talk about money other than some, piddly allowance or something that a parent is going to give a child. I don't know if there is enough real legitimate talk about how money works and how it doesn't, and what you should do with it and what you should not do with it, because money is one of those things that is very pliable, it's very malleable, and it really depends on how much knowledge you have and what application you've seen model, I think, with your parents to some degree. And I think that does cast the die on how a lot of people feel about money.
I think a lot of our parents aren't feeling confident in their skills with money, and so they're just kind of avoiding the subject with their kids. I mean, think about it. When people come in to meet with us, I have yet to meet someone who walks in the door going, I've got this figured out. Almost everybody who comes in the door is walking in the door going, well, I hope I have got what I need. I hope I've got this figured out. Can you help me out? So I think when you feel a lack of confidence, you're less willing to pour into the next generation. That's just creating a cycle that keeps this problem going.
I don't know if I'm going to kind of kindly disagree with you, because there are people that walk in the door that say, I got this figured out,
and
they don't have it figured out.
That's true.
They have learned something from TikTok, or they've learned something from their buddy at the water cooler, or whatever the case may be. Because someone says it, even if they say it with conviction and some sort of supposed authority, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right.
Yes, there's a lot more of that now, and I think TikTok has made it way more common for people to pose as a leader of thought in a particular area. We call them finfluencers jokingly around here.
Yes.
But just because it's on TikTok or Instagram or some other social media resource, even YouTube, does not mean A, that it works in general, or B, that it works for you. I've even seen some things that are totally illegal that people are recommending people try. It's just not great to take that there. Your financial advisor is the resource for what works for you and your family.
Well, if you kind of look at a little bit deeper into this money stress thing, you find out that oftentimes people have these unanswered questions, things like, am I saving enough? Or what happens if I lose my job? Okay, well, let's kind of think through this. A financial plan will tell you whether you're saving enough. You've got to run the numbers. There is no magic wand, bippity boppity boop that's going to come along and go, oh, hey, I'm saving enough. Everything's great. You have to run the numbers. You have to understand the math of it. And I think people, as a general rule, are kind of, a little bit skittish of math because they didn't do well in school with math or whatever the case may be. And even if they did, they didn't teach you some of the financial principles that are necessary there. So I think, in this whole question of saving enough, you've got to run the numbers and understand how to do that. What happens if I lose my job? Well, that's easy.
Yeah.
An emergency fund needs to happen if you lose your job, because we talk about the fact that there should be 3 to 6 months of expenses involved in an emergency fund. Now, I have had people come in and be just all up in arms because they have 3 to 6 months of money sitting in their bank account and they feel like it's collecting dust. It's not doing anything. It is doing what you need it to do. It is your insurance policy. It's not an investment. It is your insurance policy. So those are all things I think that are very much apropos in terms of what's going on with people and this stress that they have about money. And that's why we do the things that we do here at GenWealth. And that is to educate you through this show, educate you through the content that we have on our YouTube channel, educate you in the meeting room. All about education, because that is what leads to less stress about money. We know that a well-educated client will be a great client because they won't be stressed about what's going on.
I think clarity is the key. When you feel like there's a clear course that you've charted, then the fear can be assuaged a lot of times. And I think that applies to a lot of things in life. When you're dealing with something where there's a lot of unknowns, then you're going to be more fearful of it. But when you're educated and you feel confident in that education, then you can step into things more confidently.
When you move from operating in reaction to headlines or whatever the case may be to operating with a plan, that's when you can really begin to relax about money and be able to make some moves that really will make a big difference for you in the future. All right, that was the first headline. The second one, this one actually comes from Market Watch. It says, these markets have been bangers this year. Here's why they have further to rally, says Goldman Sachs. Now, I had to go back and talk to my kids and go, bangers? What? I figured it out.
These are bangers. That's something we use in our language every day, John. Come on.
Yes, I know. Okay, so here's my rub on this. I have been around long enough to know that markets are great and they work and everybody's all in favor of it until they don't. And there are cycles when they don't. Markets will go down. I know that is a shocker because, 2022 is the last time we had a big downturn in the market. And so nobody really, I guess if you don't count the Trump tariff fit last year, then 2022 is probably it. But we have this recency bias thing that goes on with people. And then, because the markets are going up, they want to basically go all in. They're kind of like, me at the blackjack table in Vegas. It's like, here, yep.
I've had a couple wins. Let me throw it all in there now.
Let's go. Let's do this. And while that works, it does until it doesn't, because the markets will cycle, the markets will change. And I think that we're setting ourselves up again for people that have that recency bias to be disappointed.
I think what happens is if you're not careful, you try to time the market. You see a trend like this one. They're talking about how some foreign stocks have done better than U.S. stocks in this article. You see that trend, you go, ooh, I want to get in on that. Often by the time you see the trend, it's already run most of its course, most likely. Now they're saying, Goldman Sachs is saying there may be some more room in these stocks, and that's potentially possible. But what often happens is when there's a big run, there's also a correction on the horizon. So I think back to GameStop. There was someone who put out this post and they were like, let's run up GameStop. Well, most people lost money because by the time they got in it, it had already been inflated. And then when it started selling, because people were like, wait a minute, I'm losing money, then it really dropped. And so a lot of people lost their money in that. What's more important than trying to hop on a trend is being well diversified. If you have a good plan that has you well diversified, then you're ready to weather whatever rally is going on, and hopefully you're monopolizing on some of those through your strategy. But if you try to time the market, the history tells us it seldom works out.
Yeah, I'm the old guy in the room, and just about any room I'm in, I'm the old guy around here. But I will tell you that diversification always works. Now, does all of your diversification work all the time? No, that's not how it's designed to be. But diversification always works. It always gives you a smoothing of what's going on. Now, there may be times like the great financial crisis when everything in the world went down, but those things are anomalies. Diversification is the right thing to do. That's hard, though, when you see markets going up, mid double digits or whatever the case may be, and you feel like already you're behind in what you're trying to do. You either have to be diversified or you have to be very, very disciplined. And the discipline is where most people really stump their toe.
Yes, they end up freaking out when the market does dip or staying out too long after a dip. There's a lot of things that can go wrong when you're trying to chase something. So in general, we are going to be big proponents of having a plan for whatever your goals are, because timing matters too when it comes to how much time you have before you need those funds. You talked a minute ago about emergency savings, and I've had that conversation with people where I've had to say, listen, you don't invest the emergency fund because it has a purpose short term. When you're walking into retirement, if you're trying to chase returns in retirement as your pure goal, you're going to miss some other opportunities and be exposed to some risks you may not have planned for.
The other thing that I think you've got to be careful of in this, Teresa, is are you invested in what's working or what's going to work?
Yeah.
And oftentimes people think that just because it has been working, and maybe let's call that large cap stocks forever, large cap growth stocks have been doing well in the United States. I owe part of that to the fact that all the 401k plans have gone to S&P 500 funds, and that's just a flow of money into those that keep pushing those stocks up. But I also think that oftentimes we forget that those things can go down, and you need to be thinking about where other opportunities might be.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the third question that we have, or the third headline that we have. My elderly mother has dementia. My sister sold her house and has hidden the proceeds.
Ooh, that's a mess.
What can we do? So let's break this down. First of all, it says mother has dementia. My sister sold her house and has hidden the proceeds. So there's all kinds of questionable things here from a legal standpoint, Teresa.
Yes, I'm going to make an assumption that her sister had power of attorney because she couldn't legally sell the house without that. So it does bring up a question about if you're choosing to give somebody power of attorney, understanding the different ways that works, whether you're going to have what's called a springing power of attorney or a durable power of attorney. And, if you have someone that you're considering giving that power to, it may make sense to have, I hate to do this, maybe two people, who have to collaborate on these things if you have this concern that something like this could happen to you. But if you give somebody power of attorney, once that is executable, they can open accounts, close accounts, sell your home, buy things under your name. There's a lot of responsibility and power that comes with that. So this to me raises some red flags about understanding and educating yourself about how those things work.
There's two things here that I think are very important. First of all, I think that there could be maybe a perspective issue here. This says, my sister sold her house and has hidden the proceeds. Well, maybe the sister does have power of attorney, and maybe the sister's doing exactly what they need to do. I guess the question would be, is the sister communicating with the other sibling, and how is that communication going? If there's some tension there, if there's some evasiveness there, that might be a problem. But it could be that the sister's doing exactly what she's supposed to do as maybe the trustee of the mother's stuff or the power of attorney or whatever the case may be. I think that is a real possibility. The second thing that I would say, Teresa, is that I think that if you are listening to this and you have elderly parents, this is kind of a wake-up call. Have some transparent conversations early on. Who has the power of attorney? What are the expectations? Ensure that the documents are updated and properly executed. How many times do we see documents are created but not properly executed?
I met with a client just 2 weeks ago who created their trust in 2021. And still did not have their home owned by the trust. So the property was not in the name of the trust, which means if they were to pass away, it's not protected by the trust. So you're right, those documents have to be properly executed. Your funding has to be done. But also, I agree with you. I hadn't thought this through when we first read this question, but you're right. This is from one person's perspective. Maybe that sister is protecting you because there was some sort of spendthrift measure that the mother has requested. It is really important to have candid conversations with your kids when you're giving them these powers, with all of them, so everybody understands what your wishes are, even though maybe one of them is going to be responsible for executing those wishes. It'd be great if all the kids know what you want.